going on with the Indian farmers in the Punjab?
So basically, what's happening is the Indian government, they have a plan to take over the food supply completely. So, and this Indian government, if you have to realize what this Indian government stands for, it stands for a Hindu supremacy or a Hindu state, and they want to use the food supply or the control of the food supply to implement their fascist ideology throughout, because India is a federal structure, and to completely take over that federal structure and implement this idea of a Hindu state, what they want to use the food supply. And the people and all the activists have realized that, and when the agitation was started in Punjab, what we showed the people of entire India, there is no need to fear this fascist regime. I know 400 plus people have died in this agitation. There have been shootings by the police, they've been tortured to death, there have been rapes by the police, and the police has used utmost force against these protesters. But still today, the protesters are there, and they're still surrounding Delhi, and they're still struggling, and they're going to surround the parliament in coming days and to bring the government to its knees. But what we have to realize, they are fighting to survive. And if the food supply, you see,
how exactly are they taking over the food supply?
Food supply is simply, at the moment, the current provision is that food supply is sold to government and public services where they store it. But at the moment, they want the private sector to take over that supply chain. So once that supply chain goes into, so we are talking about people who are committed to eugenics in India, who are committed to this concept of caste system. When we are thinking of caste system, we must think of it as a political system of subjugation and slavery. This system has been in that region and enslaving that people for thousands of years. They want to implement it to a degree that there would be nothing, no opposition whatsoever. So this is the last resistance, what the people who are protesting and surrounding Delhi. And if that resistance fails, the food supplies goes into the hand, because what they're trying to do is the private companies just want to buy the entire grain and rice. So if entire grain and rice is bought by these private companies, they can easily store away and stop it from going into the public service. And that's where the main struggle is. And they have done this in the past. We have to realize, in the time of World War and World War and II, they did exactly the same system. They controlled the food supply, and they stopped the main food stores, especially wheat and rice, because they are the main staples, and they stored them away and did not let it into public circulation, and that led to mass famine, which they blamed on everybody.
So what the current government regulator does at the moment is
there's a supply chain set up at the moment. Supply chain is set up, it's running very nicely. So at least people get, so if there's enough production, people can buy food. So current provision, it's not the best system, but at least the food supply is getting to the people. But if these private corporations take over this system, it's not just a fear. We know these people who are buying these corporations, they have direct links to Bill Gates and Melinda Foundation, and they want to control the food supply and mass murder people. And they have openly said that's what they want to do. We must understand in the West that caste system is a political system of slavery. And I would like to add, I think a lot of people miss when we talk about Priti Patel, Rishi Sunak and Alok Sharma. These are cabinet ministers. They want to overthrow the British system and implement that same political system here as well. So once we, just like Pierce said, there is the same attempt being made in Britain to take over the food supply, and these are very dangerous attempts.
Is there no way that small and medium-sized companies could take over the government's role instead, run by the Indian farmers themselves?
You see, that's what they're doing at the moment. The Sikhs, we have our localized militias, but the problem is if the military moves in, so if the protest didn't take place and the military moves in, you have no access to your own land. And with COVID being placed as a tyranny, half of the food crop didn't even get seeded this year. So this is what we have to, this year, the food supply, when we hear the United Nations talking about the food supply, United Nations and their policies of lockdown are the reason for shortages in the food supplies, because the crop is not getting planted, because we are only going to have half the harvest which the world had last year. So imagine the amount of destruction coming in the future because of lack of food. And whatever's left, they want to control it completely. We have Bill Gates in America buying over all the farmlands. We have the same system in Europe, in the UK, and all over Asia as well. So we have to understand this is a globalist agenda, and their agenda is use COVID, and COVID will do enough damage as it is. But if the food supply goes completely into their hands, they will starve you to death.
So what privileges are they giving the big companies then?
Basically, they can buy the grain at their own cost. So at the moment there is a standard which has been set through the current process which they have in Punjab and Haryana. These are the main 4 Sikh states: Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan, Uttaranchal and UP. And they want to take that away. And they want to introduce private companies to it. And the private companies, they are more or less run by outlets of Bill Gates and Melinda Foundation. And if they go into that hand, all the food, they will buy the food on the cheap, firstly, and the farmers will not get enough money which they have invested into the crop. So they will go under debt and die through the debt system in India. And secondly, the food store which they will sell would be stored by private companies, and they will deliberately take away the food from all of our supermarkets and wait for us to starve to death. So we have to understand, this is a political system. Lockdown is a political system. It is not a It's a political system or implementing eugenics. But what people have to understand, they have to introduce common sense. If crops are not being planted because of COVID, there is going to be food shortages. Food shortages are going to hit us this year, and next year it's going to get even worse because this is not going away. These lockdowns are permanent. We have to understand lockdown is a political ideology. It is not a scientific need. Until we understand that, we will struggle.
Thank you.
All right.